America is collapsing, and you're living through it whether you realize it or not. The numbers don't lie. 44 million people now face food insecurity. Over 14 million homes are behind on utility bills. And more than 1 in 3 working Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. Prices are exploding. Wages are frozen. Debt is record-breaking. And the system is quietly bleeding the middle class dry. Grocery receipts feel like car payments. Rent devours half your paycheck. And for millions, the American dream has turned into a paycheck-to-paycheck survival trap. This isn't fear-mongering. This is the new reality, and it's unraveling faster than you think. We're counting down the 10 most brutal signs that the collapse of everyday life in America isn't coming. It's already here. 10. Public transportation is quietly falling apart, and no one's talking about it. You want to see the collapse of American life in real time? Ride a city bus. Take a subway. Stand on a corner waiting for a train that never arrives. Public transportation in the U.S. The very system meant to connect people to jobs, healthcare, and basic services is breaking down in front of our eyes. Not with some dramatic explosion, but with a quiet, steady decline that's making everyday mobility harder, slower, and more expensive for millions of Americans. Let's start with the numbers. Over 45% of Americans have no access to public transportation at all. And in many cities, service cuts have gutted what little remained after the pandemic. New York's MTA faces a $3 billion budget shortfall. San Francisco's BART system has lost over 50% of its pre-pandemic ridership and is now floating doomsday scenarios that include massive layoffs and line closures. And smaller cities? They're doing worse. In places like St. Louis, Cleveland, or Milwaukee, buses now run on skeleton schedules, if they run at all. But this isn't just a logistics problem, it's an economic time bomb. When people can't get to work, they lose jobs. When seniors can't reach pharmacies, their health deteriorates. When students miss school because their bus route was cut, educational inequality grows. And unlike the wealthier class who simply hop in an Uber or drive their own vehicle, working-class Americans are stuck waiting sometimes in dangerous weather, sometimes in dangerous neighborhoods for transportation systems that are no longer reliable. Maintenance backlogs are now counted in decades, not months. Transit worker shortages are pushing overtime costs through the roof. And while we're told that infrastructure investment is coming, most of the funding is getting funneled into highways, not subways or bus routes. The collapse of transportation isn't just about commuting, it's about access. Access to opportunity, access to healthcare, access to stability. And as these systems decay, entire communities are being left behind, one missed ride at a time. This isn't some far-off problem. It's happening now in our neighborhoods, with every broken escalator, every missed connection, every transit app that says, delayed indefinitely. Mobility in America is no longer guaranteed, and without it, everyday life gets smaller, harder, and more isolated. That's collapse, whether we call it that or not. 9. Fast food is now a luxury. And that's not a joke. It used to be the fallback. The dollar menu, the drive-thru, the comfort food that millions relied on when times were tough. But now, fast food is the latest casualty in America's cost of living crisis, and it's pricing itself out of the affordable category entirely. In California, a Big Mac meal now costs over $18 at some locations. McDonald's, once the symbol of cheap, quick food, has become the subject of memes comparing their prices to upscale bistros. But this isn't just sticker shock. It's a fundamental shift in how America feeds itself. For families working multiple jobs, fast food was never a luxury, it was a time saver. Now it's becoming a budget buster. And here's the kicker. As prices rise, portions are shrinking. Shrinkflation has hit the industry hard. Fewer fries, thinner patties, smaller drinks, all while prices climb by 10%, 15%, or even 25% year over year. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that limited service meal prices rose by over 5.8% in 2025 alone, more than double the rate of core inflation. And the reason? It's not just greedy corporations. It's a collapse of the entire supply chain. Rising wages, from $15 to $20 plus in some states. Skyrocketing food ingredient costs. Commercial rent hikes. And higher insurance premiums are squeezing franchises so hard that even national chains are closing locations. Pizza Hut shuttered hundreds of outlets last year. Subway is quietly exiting low-income neighborhoods. Jack in the Box? Struggling to staff 24-hour stores. This hits poor communities hardest. For many, there are no grocery stores within walking distance, only fast food chains. So when those chains price people out, food access evaporates. The working poor don't skip meals out of choice. They skip them because the drive-thru now demands $20 for a combo. This isn't just economic, it's psychological. When even a basic fast food meal feels out of reach, it chips away at the illusion of normalcy. It signals that nothing is safe from inflation, not even the burger and fries that once represented cheap comfort. This is how everyday collapse looks, not with sirens or speeches, but with a family pulling up to a menu board, seeing the prices, and driving away, empty-handed and hungry. 8. The war on used cars and the death of affordable transportation. Nobody's talking about it loudly, but if you've tried to buy a used car in the last 2 years, you already know affordable transportation is dead. Used car prices have exploded, with the average cost of a pre-owned vehicle hitting $26,091 by late 2025, according to Edmunds. That's a 40% increase compared to pre-pandemic levels, and while prices have slightly softened from their all-time highs, the damage is permanent. Why? Because used car supply chains are broken. COVID halted production. Leasing dried up. Repossessions are climbing too slowly to meet demand, and rental fleets still aren't selling like they used to. That means fewer used cars entering the market and skyrocketing prices on whatever's left. But here's the kicker. It's not just the price of the vehicle. It's everything else. Interest rates on used car loans now average 11.9%, nearly triple what they were a few years ago. Insurance premiums have jumped 17% year over year, with some states like Florida and Michigan seeing even higher spikes due to climate-related risks and policy pullouts. And let's not forget repairs. The average car repair now costs over $500, and parts shortages mean simple fixes take weeks or months. Mechanics are backlogged. Supply chains for alternators, control arms, and even basic fuses are still catching up. For low-income workers, especially those outside of major metro areas, this is a death blow. No car means no job. No job means no income. And with public transit failing, see point number 10, there's no plan B. This transportation crisis has turned vehicles into luxury goods. The days of grabbing a decent $4,000 beater to get to work are over. Those cars don't exist anymore. Or if they do, they have 220,000 miles and a cracked transmission. Dealers know this, and they're jacking prices accordingly. Subprime auto loans are back with a vengeance, and delinquencies are rising fast. In Q4 2025 alone, 7.7% of all subprime auto loans were more than 60 days delinquent, the highest since the Great Recession. Transportation has always been the quiet pillar holding up the economy. Without it, nothing functions. And now that pillar is splintering. So when we talk about the collapse of everyday life, let's not forget the broken-down Corolla in the driveway, the unaffordable quote from the mechanic, or the young worker who missed their shift because they couldn't find a ride. This is collapse, with 4 wheels and a $600 monthly payment. 7. Healthcare is still broken, and it's quietly becoming a luxury. Let's be brutally honest, our healthcare system has always been flawed. But what's happening now? It's turning into a slow-motion collapse, pricing out even middle-class Americans, and forcing more people to delay, ration, or skip care altogether. As of late 2025, a staggering 38% of adults reported delaying medical treatment due to cost, according to Gallup. That's the highest it's been in over 2 decades, and it's getting worse. The price of everything from urgent care visits to prescription medications has ballooned. A single ER visit can now cost $3,000 to $6,000, even with insurance. And let's not forget about those surprise out-of-network bills that sneak through the cracks of coverage. More Americans now rely on GoFundMe than any social safety net to pay medical bills. That's not hyperbole, that's reality. But the deeper crisis lies in the disappearing access. In rural areas, over 450 hospitals have either closed or drastically cut services since 2010. Primary care shortages are now nationwide, with patients waiting an average of 26 days just to see a doctor in many major cities. Meanwhile, premiums for employer-sponsored plans have hit $8,435 a year on average, with deductibles rising alongside them. High deductible plans mean that even insured patients are spending thousands out of pocket before coverage kicks in. The result? People stop going. They live with pain. They skip blood work. They hope the chest pressure is indigestion, not a heart attack. And it's not just physical health, mental health care is collapsing too. Wait lists for therapists stretch into months. And psychiatric appointments are nearly impossible to find unless you can pay cash. Millions of Americans are walking around with undiagnosed anxiety, untreated depression, and PTSD from economic stress, and they're expected to just keep functioning. If you're not already sick, you will be. Because stress, malnutrition, and burnout are the default state of working-class America. We used to believe that access to medical care was a given in a developed nation. Now it's becoming a question of class. The working poor delay care. The middle class gets hit with bills they can't pay. And the rich? They get concierge doctors and private clinics. When you have to choose between rent and insulin, or between groceries and a specialist visit, it's not a healthcare system anymore, it's a paywall. That's what collapse looks like. Quiet, invisible, deadly. 6. Childcare has become financially impossible, and it's breaking families apart. Here's something no politician wants to admit. Childcare in America is collapsing, and it's pushing families to their breaking point. For millions of working parents, the cost of daycare or a babysitter has become so outrageous that staying home losing a second income entirely actually saves money. That's not a sign of economic health. That's a warning siren. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the average annual cost of childcare in the U.S. is now $11,582 per child, and in cities like New York, San Francisco, and Boston, it soars to $20,000 to $28,000 per year, per child. And those numbers don't even include the rising costs of after-school programs, summer care, or babysitters on days when daycare is closed. For a dual-income household making a modest $50,000 each, childcare consumes more than one entire paycheck. And for single parents, it's catastrophic. Many are forced to rely on patchwork networks of grandparents, neighbors, or rotating shifts with their partner, assuming they even have one. The system is so broken that over 50% of Americans now live in childcare deserts, where there are more than 3 children for every available spot. And the crisis is accelerating. Over 70,000 daycare workers have left the profession since 2020, burned out by low pay, long hours, and pandemic trauma. Providers can't hire enough staff to meet demand, so wait lists stretch for years. Parents report signing up for infant care before the baby is even born and still not getting a spot. Meanwhile, government subsidies are a joke. Most families earn too much to qualify, but not enough to afford care on their own. and tax credits barely move the needle. This isn't just a personal struggle, it's an economic disaster. When parents leave the workforce because childcare is unaffordable, household income plummets and the national labor pool shrinks. It becomes a vicious cycle. The less money families make, the more fragile they become. The more fragile they become, the more likely they are to fall behind on everything else: rent, debt, food, healthcare. It all connects. And for children, the consequences are just as dire. Without quality early education, kids fall behind before they even start kindergarten. We're raising a generation of children in a country that no longer supports families. That's the reality, and it's tearing people apart from the inside out. 5. Insurance premiums are skyrocketing, and they're gutting middle-class budgets. This one flies under the radar, but it's draining American households dry. Insurance, once considered a boring, routine bill, is becoming an unstoppable financial avalanche. Homeowners, renters, auto, health, and now even pet insurance are all exploding in cost, and no one seems to know when it will stop. Let's start with home insurance, because this one is going nuclear. In states like Florida, Texas, and California, premiums have increased by over 35% year over year, and in some zip codes, rates have literally doubled. Why? Wildfires, hurricanes, flooding, and the insurance companies fleeing those high-risk regions in droves. Major carriers like State Farm and Allstate have stopped writing new policies in large swaths of California. Citizens Property Insurance in Florida has ballooned into the last resort, covering over 1.5 million homes, a number so large it threatens to bankrupt the entire system if another major storm hits. And renters aren't safe either. Renters insurance used to be a $15 per month afterthought. Now, $40 to $60 a month and rising. Combine that with auto insurance, which has risen 19.2% year over year in 2025, faster than any other consumer category except energy. Repair costs are higher due to labor shortages. Vehicle values are inflated, and insurers are passing every cent of that onto the customer. Then there's health insurance, see number 7, and the dark horse in this mess: deductibles and co-pays. Even if your premium didn't go up, your out-of-pocket costs definitely did. And most people don't even realize what they're on the hook for until the bill arrives. It's death by 1,000 cuts. You think you're insured, but when disaster strikes, you discover you're only partially covered. Or your deductible is $8,000. Or your medication is non-formulary. The middle class used to rely on insurance as a buffer. Now it's just another burden. A family of 4 could easily be spending $1,500 to $2,000 per month on all forms of insurance combined, and that's before they actually use any of it. This is what collapse looks like. Invisible costs rising faster than paychecks. When people have to choose between paying premiums and paying rent, they're no longer protected. They're just financially exposed. And once you drop insurance, one accident, one emergency, one flooded basement or cracked windshield, and it's game over. This isn't about being prepared. It's about not being able to afford the illusion of security anymore. 4. Food is getting more expensive and more empty than ever before. Let's talk about food, because what's happening at grocery stores right now is one of the most underreported collapses in American life. It's not just that prices are up, it's what you get for your money that's become borderline insulting. The U.S. Department of Agriculture confirmed that grocery prices rose 4.8% in 2025. But that number is a joke when you walk into a store and see $7 eggs, $5 loaves of bread, and $4 heads of lettuce. We're not imagining this. We're living it. And it's not just inflation, it's shrinkflation and skimpflation. Cereal boxes are smaller. Chip bags are 40% air. Frozen meals have fewer calories. Less meat, more filler. Protein bars are now made with less protein. It's not just about cost, it's about quality. Americans are being charged more for less, And they're being gaslit into thinking things are getting better. They're not. Take a walk through a store in 2026, and the fresh produce looks limp. The meat section? Prices are insane, and supply is inconsistent. Chicken prices remain elevated due to avian flu outbreaks. Beef is more expensive due to rising feed and transportation costs. And seafood. Good luck affording it unless it's farmed tilapia. What's replacing real food? Ultra-processed garbage. Sales of frozen pizzas, instant noodles, and processed snacks are up 23% year over year. Why? Because that's what people can afford. And don't even get started on baby formula, which is still plagued by shortages and price gouging, despite government intervention. Meanwhile, food banks are overwhelmed. Lines stretch for blocks in cities from Denver to Baltimore. Feeding America reports that 44 million Americans, including 1 in 5 children, now face food insecurity. That's not just a statistic, it's a collapse of the basic social contract. We used to be a country that overfed its citizens. Now we're a country where families water down milk and skip meals to pay rent. And this crisis is spreading into schools, where children depend on cafeteria meals that are increasingly underfunded and nutritionally bankrupt. This is more than inflation. It's malnutrition disguised as frugality. When food becomes both expensive and hollow, health breaks down, energy disappears, and everyday life becomes a struggle to simply function. We're not just paying more, we're getting weaker. And that is the most dangerous collapse of all. 3. The rise of the working homeless. The death of the American middle across America. A disturbing reality is growing. Full-time workers are becoming homeless. People with jobs at Walmart, Amazon, or driving Uber now sleep in cars, shelters, or tents because rent has become unaffordable. In 2025, the U.S. recorded over 653,000 homeless, its highest number ever. But experts say the real figure is likely over 1.5 million when you include the hidden homeless. Those in motels, couch surfing, or sleeping in parking lots. This isn't just about addiction or mental illness anymore. It's about low wages and soaring housing costs. The median U.S. rent hit $2,050, while cities like San Francisco ask over $2,800 for a studio. How can someone earning $17 an hour survive that? They don't. Many live in vans, shower at gyms, and work full-time jobs by day. Shelters are overwhelmed, and cities now punish homelessness with fines and encampment sweeps, offering no real solutions. When workers can't afford shelter, the American dream isn't just broken, it's gone. And most of the working homeless suffer in silence, hiding their struggle from coworkers and friends. The collapse isn't coming. It's already sleeping in the parking lot outside your store. 2. The collapse of trust. Why Americans feel alone in a crowd. America isn't just facing economic collapse, it's enduring a psychological one. In 2026, trust has eroded across every part of life. Only 16% of Americans trust the federal government. Faith in media, banks, and even neighbors is disintegrating. It's not just politics, it's a belief that the system is rigged and no one's coming to help. That hopelessness breeds isolation. The Surgeon General declared loneliness a national epidemic in 2025, with health effects equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Despite being glued to our screens, people are more disconnected than ever. Church attendance, civic engagement, and volunteerism are in free fall. Americans retreat into digital bubbles, self-censor in public, and suffer in silence when disaster strikes. The collapse isn't just financial, it's emotional. It's the breakdown of the trust and connection that once held society together. And when people stop believing in each other, collapse isn't just likely, it becomes inevitable. 1. Time poverty and the final theft of the American life. And here it is, the most invisible collapse of all. Not money, not housing, not politics. Time. In 2026, Americans are experiencing an unprecedented crisis of time poverty, the feeling that there are simply not enough hours in the day to survive, let alone live. This is the quietest, most personal collapse. The one that steals your peace, your family, your hobbies, your health, and no one sees it because it doesn't show up on a balance sheet. But it's everywhere. People working 2 or 3 jobs to stay afloat barely see their kids. They eat dinner in their car between shifts. They answer emails in bed at midnight. They work weekends and holidays, not for ambition, but for survival. Even white-collar professionals are burning out faster than ever. Remote work didn't liberate them. It tethered them to their devices 24/7. A recent Deloitte survey showed 77% of American workers feel burned out. That's not a workplace problem. That's a national emergency. Meanwhile, household chores don't go away. Childcare still needs attention. Errands stack up. Commutes eat hours. Everything is rushed, fragmented, and squeezed. People now schedule joy like a dentist appointment if they can afford it. And forget vacations. The U.S. already ranked last among developed countries for paid time off. But now even those with PTO don't use it because they're afraid of falling behind, losing hours, or appearing replaceable. What's the point of earning a living if you have no life to live? This is the final stage of collapse, the spiritual one. When time becomes a commodity for the rich and a burden for the working class, you don't just lose leisure. You lose meaning. You lose relationships. You lose yourself. And no amount of budgeting, side hustling, or self-help books can fix that. The truth is brutal. Millions of Americans are no longer living lives they're maintaining survival schedules. They don't dream anymore. They calculate. They triage. They race against the clock and collapse in exhaustion. And then they do it again tomorrow. This is the real theft. The kind that doesn't make headlines but haunts us all. Time is the one thing we can never earn back, and it's being stolen in broad daylight. That, more than anything, is how we know the collapse of everyday life in America has already happened. Quietly, completely, irreversibly. So if you feel like you're working harder than ever and somehow falling further behind, you're not imagining it. You're experiencing it. This isn't a bad week or a rough month. This is a structural breakdown of what used to be normal life in America, a place where the basics food, shelter, time, peace used to be guaranteed if you just showed up and did the work. That contract, it's broken. Quietly. Deliberately. And millions of people are waking up to that reality every single day. The question now is simple. How much more can collapse before something snaps? If this breakdown hit you in the gut, if it made you see your own life in a new light, then you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me which part of this collapse hit you the hardest. Let your voice be part of the record. And if you want to stay ahead of the next financial, political, and social shockwave coming our way, make sure you hit subscribe. Because what's coming next will make this chapter look like the calm before the storm.